back to another bad book review by Beth, which I probably should rebrand this channel. It's not that this is going to be a bad book review. It's just that this book, it was not good. If you saw my video of They Wish They Were Us, this is the book I thought that I was going to be reading for that one. So I did save myself a couple weeks of misery. I still dove into this with hopes that a new me would be a new perception, and it wasn't. To be clear, the book is People Like Us by Dana Maley, or Maley. It is also a book about a group of teenagers at this elite boarding school, and it involves a murder. So can't you see why, like, with the titles and the subject matter, I could mix them up? Yeah. This book actually started really strong, but I think what this book lacked was development. It lacked character development, and then it lacked plot development to an extent. The main character, her name is Donovan. She and her friends have gone to the skeleton dance, and now they're doing this whole thing where they go to the lake and they skinny dip, only to discover the body of a classmate already in the lake. Kay is like, I have no idea who this girl is. It seems like some of my other friends might know, but they won't admit to it. And then she gets to her room and she finds an email from this dead girl. Her name is Jessica Lane. In the email is a link to a website called Revenge is a Dish. It was really great, like a really great opener. We set up a problem, we set up another problem, and now it's gonna be basically a battle of self, like to do what's right or to do what's wrong, because what this website then directs her to do, because she is a scholarship student. She's there on an athletic scholarship because she plays soccer. This website says, hey, I know your deep, dark secrets. I'm not gonna need to go to college. I'm gonna make sure that you have a way to go to college. But first, you have to take these other people down. From there, she is tasked with taking down her friends. We all know I'm all about friends, right? But I also like that internal struggle of right versus wrong and of what is she gonna do? But the problem is, we don't get enough time to actually know her friends before she starts taking them down, because she only has a 24-hour period of time in order to get each person to leave the school. We're probably in chapter 2 or 3 when she goes after the first girl. We do have moments where even the girl is no longer present. We do see instances of them together, of this friend group and this and the other, but I never got a sense of who these girls were, and then I never got a sense of who Kay was before she started taking them out. And that was a problem for me. I need to connect with my main character in some sort of way before they start doing things that, for me, don't make sense. Like, I need to know why they're choosing. So it's not even that they don't make sense, but it doesn't make sense because I don't know why they're making those decisions. If these are her best friends, why is she making the decision to turn on them? I have no clue. And then that's something throughout this entire book where I really didn't know who Kay was. Her friend group is the Mean Girls, right? And apparently she's the queen bee. Although, so in the friend group, we have Ty, Bree, Maddie, Corey, Trisha. That's who I'm missing. I'm so glad I make notes. Kay is the only one there on a scholarship. The others are extremely wealthy. I couldn't understand why Kay was their ringleader, because there's only one instance in this entire novel where I felt like she actually had a backbone and that she actually acted like a queen bee. And that was the one time that I was invested in her. I thought maybe it was because shock. This girl has died and now she has this choice to make. So she's not her normal self. But she stands up for herself in this one instance, and then she goes back to being very kind of weak and whiny, and I never figured out who she was. In some ways, this is a psychological thriller. I started hoping that maybe, because we know she has a checkered past, and we know that she somehow has ties to Jessica Lange via this incident called Dear Valentine. And then she also has an incident with the deaths of her brother and her best friend. So I'm thinking maybe she's a psycho. Something happened in her past. She changed, and then she came here, and then she morphed into somebody else. And then throughout this novel, the blame that we as the readers are placing on other characters, because we're like, no way, Kay cannot be the murderer. I'm like, what if in the end she was? I was looking forward to that. And in terms of this plot, she was not the perpetrator. She does have one big secret, which I will reveal towards the end. But even then, I couldn't quite figure out how sinister she was. I read a synopsis, and the person painted her as like this evil mastermind, emotionally detached from this situation. And so she was able to make it happen while still coming across as a victim. And I was just waiting for that revelation moment so that I could see what this person was talking about. It was a letdown. Let's get back into this plot. The school that she goes to, this elite boarding school, is called Bates Academy. She has begun going to Bates because her brother Todd had been murdered, and then her best friend Megan had committed suicide. She feels the guilt of not being the one to save her brother, and she feels like when she's at home, that is how her parents think of her, and it's just not a great home situation. She had been dating this guy named Spencer from the local school, Easterly. Her best friend Bree, who's also something of a love interest, is also in a relationship with a girl from there named Justine. I was disappointed by this romance between Bree and Kay. And let me put it out there, I am not the target audience for this novel. In terms of the mystery, I'm right there. But in terms of it being an LGBTQ novel, I am not the target audience. So there were moments that I could not connect. I was disappointed with this relationship. I guess when Kay got to Bates, she hadn't really come out, and then Bree hadn't. Well, no, I think Bree had come out by that point. But by being at Bates and being around Bree, who is her BFF, she realized that she had feelings for Bree, and that this is the first time it had ever happened, and she's trying to work through these feelings. She does make some missteps. She makes some comments that she shouldn't have made, and in the end, she realizes this damaged the genesis of whatever she could have had with Bree. But then she ultimately works up the courage to ask Bree to go to a play at Easterly. She's assuming it's a date, but then afterwards, so she gets really emotional during this play, and Justine is the lead actor. So she gets emotional and she leaves. And then when she goes to the cast party, which I have no clue how they got invited to this cast party, but they did, she spots Bree in the corner chatting up Justine, and she gets really jealous. This is when she meets Spencer, because he calls her out on her jealousy, and he points out that even though she's been staring at Bree, Bree hasn't even looked her way. And so this is how they then connect. Bree said she was just talking to Justine, which, you know, now it's kind of like an unreliable narrator situation, which I like, because I like being thrown. I like it when we think we know something only for it to turn out differently. But I don't think that Maylee, I'm never going to get her name right, I don't think she did a great job at really portraying what their relationship was. It felt very one-sided. Kay and Spencer get into their relationship. I still don't understand what kind of relationship they had, because when the novel opens, they had recently broken up because he had cheated on her, but she's still essentially obsessed with him. But her feelings for Bree supersede her feelings for him in a way they always have, which leads to a moment where they are at a party at Spencer's house and they end up in a room together and they're getting hot and heavy. Spencer walks in on them, and this is a moment where, forgive me, I don't remember what Kay said about this, but she pulled away in some respects. And this is something that Bree reveals. This was another moment, like, we had our moments and we kept missing them, and this was a moment where you did not choose me over Spencer, and all of these little moments added up to, this is never gonna happen for us. We have all these things. Because we didn't get a lot of characterization, we didn't get much of any character except for Kay and this other girl named Nola. And even with Nola was a huge miss. I don't know how I feel about Bree. At first, I thought she was great. She seemed like a really great friend, and I think adding the romance into them muddied the water, because Maylee, she just did not spend enough time developing characters, so I knew how to follow them. I knew how to be invested in them. But this whole novel, Kay is essentially obsessed with Bree, but we don't even get to spend time with Bree. And so it's just a huge fail for me. That took up a lot of bandwidth of this novel, which meant that there were other more important aspects, in my opinion, that were left to the wayside, including solving this mystery. Kay didn't actually do much to figure out who actually killed Jessica. Spencer had slept with Jessica, which is what had broken these two up. Although apparently, like, him catching her and Bree also led to their breakup to some respect. Now we're like, this is why Kay can be a suspect. I don't know. This book was such a letdown. Let me just dive into how the Revenge is a Dish website works. It was a computer project, and apparently Kay, the only thing she's good at is soccer. She goes in and she can't access it because she requires a code. The first thing she does is reach out to this outcast named Nola Kent. I know small schools work differently, but I never would have reached out to somebody that I did not know, that I had tormented, and that I didn't particularly care for. So this, again, right at the beginning, I thought was such a strange choice for the author to make, because we get nothing else except that Kay is the queen bee, her friend group are the mean girls, and they have made this one girl's life a living hell. Nola says, all right, I'll help you. Which, again, I'm like, what? I mean, I know she's a weirdo, but like, she says, well, if I help you, you have to get me on the soccer team. Soccer was another thing that I thought was kind of a pointless subplot here. It took up a lot of bandwidth because it was a huge determining factor for Kay's future. But we didn't actually get any of it here. So why it needed to have such a high emphasis is questionable to me. Despite the fact that Jessica is dead and all future games and practices are canceled, sure, I'll get you on the team. Nola gets the password, and the first person is Ty. Ty plays tennis, and then so each dish is kind of like a rhyme, a riddle that they have to solve. And they realize that Ty must be taking some kind of performance enhancing drugs, which I didn't know how to take this, because the performance enhancing drugs were tied back to a professional tennis player. I don't know if this person is real or not. For the sake of the novel, she is. This tennis player got punished for taking these, even though they're not technically illegal. Why it was a problem, I don't understand. Kay approaches her and she's like, I know what you're doing. And the next thing we know, Ty has left. Whiplash much? Who is Ty? Ty wasn't the nicest person. She was the person, like when I was in school, I had a friend who could cut me off at the knees like it was nothing. I could never come up with a comeback for her that would burn the way she burned me. It's all in good fun. She was my friend, but she really knew how to say things that hurt. It was difficult. And so Ty is that same sort of friend where you love her, you hate her, she's gonna give everybody the same kind of treatment. But that's all we know, except that she's rich. Now she's gone and she's off at a public school, and Kay's like, it won't be a big deal. She'll get into whatever school she wants anyways. I'm like, but it's on a permanent record. And if tennis was going to be her ticket of some sort, or just any part of her future, like now it probably won't be. So why aren't we grieving this a little bit more? I will take this very first one because she had no clue that when she put that password in and she chose that first recipe, that her timer was going to start then and there. I will accept that she would make a rash decision. But what she did not give us was any sort of remorse, any sort of doubt. It was like, I don't want to do this to her, but I have to because if I don't, my secret will get out. Which I will accept that too. Not all protagonists are good. They just happen to be the person that we see the story through. But we saw no internal struggle from her, and I needed to know why. The next target is Trisha. If I knew nothing about Ty, I knew even less about Trisha, except she again is extremely wealthy. Her crime is that apparently she had been sleeping with a teacher. Everybody, like her friend group, I should say, is rightfully so upset with Kay. And especially now that Nola is hanging around all the time, which I was like, okay, to give it to Nola, yes, girl, you mark your territory and you say, hey, I've got my foot in the door. I'm going to hang out with this girl because now we're in it together. We're co-conspirators. Like if she rejects me, she's done for. But I thought it awfully presumptuous of her just to show up. And then Kay would never, she didn't explain anything. She didn't even try to come up with an explanation as to why she was all of a sudden buddy-buddy with this girl. Now her friends are like, you did this to Ty. We don't want to have anything to do with you, except for sort of Bree. But as I said, we don't see Bree much. Like she literally drops in to have a chat at lunch and then she leaves again. I could have liked Bree. What I saw from Bree, I liked, but I don't know who Bree is. And I don't know who Bree is in context to Kay, because Kay spends 98% of this novel with Nola. She, at the 11th hour, is able to get Trisha and this teacher kicked out of school. And in exchange for this, Nola wants a date with this guy named Greg, who was Jessica's ex-boyfriend, and they also recently broke up because she slept with Spencer. I thought during this novel, one of the other roads we could have taken was, who's Jessica? We do learn she was involved in this debacle called Dear Valentine. By knowing that, I'm like, all right, this is why she has a revenge website, is because she's taking revenge on the people who made her miserable. It's maybe halfway through the novel, right before halfway through the novel, that we even learn anything in depth about this Dear Valentine incident. It's not even teased so much. Like it might be mentioned, but it's not teased. And it was a great plot point. I was like, Dear Valentine, now that sounds interesting. The third person on this website is Nola herself. I'm ambivalent regarding this because it seems like this website is targeting Kay and her hive. Nola is not part of the hive. She is allegedly the person that Trisha paid, because we learned this at the very end. Dear Valentine was an incident in which for Valentine's Day, you could send roses to people, and it was a popularity contest. The more flowers you got, the more popular you were. Kay receives this beautiful orchid. She thinks it's from Bree. She talks to Bree. Bree's like, that was not me. What Kay decides to do, because now she feels like she's being made fun of. Somebody is making fun of her. So she decides that she wants to send this anonymous Valentine petals from this flower every day with some sort of note. Essentially, just like it's an attack. Trisha bankrolls this whole thing and somehow is able to get in contact with the delivery person who delivered the orchid. And then this person is the conduit until all the petals are done. And it's pretty vicious. Turns out that Nola is this delivery person. She's like, yeah, Jessica is the one that was receiving this stuff. And so that's why she wanted to get back at me, because I was part of this debacle. This is foreshadowing right here. Foreshadowing all over my face. I guess I don't really care enough. Like, literally after chapter 2, I 100% disconnected. Like, from the moment that she took down Ty, I could care less. So Nola is like, hey, do you remember Hunter? And Kay's like, Hunter? You mean our head mistress's cat? I was like, why does everybody love this cat so much? Apparently this cat was like an unofficial mascot and everybody loved it. But at some point this cat had gone missing and their head mistress was bereft. Nola reveals that she had discovered this cat. It had been tortured, so then she took it and she buried it. She has to dispose of the evidence or something. So she and Kay go and they get the cat, the bones in the bag. And they're coming out when the detective somehow stumbles across them. So they part ways, and Kay, being the star soccer player that she is, who's in such great shape, is like, I'm gonna outrun this woman. Hopefully she doesn't know it's me, and then hopefully she doesn't catch Nola. This detective's not dumb. She does figure out who Kay is, and this is the one time that Kay shows a backbone, and that is when she's called in for questioning. This detective is trying to railroad her. Eventually, she's like, why am I spineless? What are you gonna do to me? And then she stomps out, and I was like, all right, turning point for Kay. We are now gonna see this ruthless person who is in charge of this hive. No, she goes right back to just being a wet rag. After that, we have Corey. Corey apparently has like stolen tests or things. It's a domino effect. We don't spend enough time with any of these. Like, I've read books where the entire novel takes place in one day. So this book could have been expanded. These chapters could have delved more into these characters, and Maylee didn't. She just didn't. And so I really don't know what Corey's offense is. She's a golfer. She is besties with the headmistress. So now, like, the entire soccer team hates Kay because she had to kick off this alternate in order to get Nola on there, and Nola is absolutely terrible. They've had one practice. I don't understand, because in this scenario, there are coaches, but they try to give the players as much responsibility as possible. So as captain of this team, Kay gets to make the decisions. I would have liked seeing how she finagled Nola into this spot, because I highly doubt that this coach would be like, sure, because it's an ultra competitive team. I am highly doubting that this coach would be like, yes, somebody I've never heard of, somebody I've never witnessed, you can put her on the team and kick off this girl who you admittedly say worked extremely hard. So now this girl that's been kicked off, her name is Holly. She's also kind of added to this list of victims who Kay has taken down. It both aggravates me and satisfies me that everybody hates Kay. It aggravates me because they just don't get it. But at the same time, it's satisfying because she's a terrible person and I have no reason to root for her whatsoever. So she deserves the hate she's getting. Nola stopped her bribery after number 2. We really never see anything happen with those at all, except now Kay is connected to Greg. She had met him earlier in the novel, the day after Jessica's body was found, because I guess she was involved with taking care of the homeless population. He and all these other volunteers were there, like with setups for the homeless to come and to pay their respects and all this kind of stuff. And he's like, nope, don't want you. But now they're like meeting every now and again. And I was like, why? Why do we need Greg? Why do we really need Spencer? Why do we need 80% of the characters in this novel? After Corey leaves, our next victim is Maddie. Maddie has been dubbed the notorious RBG, which I was like, what does this stand for? At one time, Bree says, oh, she's the notorious Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And I was like, she's a politician. What does she have to do with Maddie, who is something of a ditz and can't keep a secret to save her life? In some ways, Maddie is the most fleshed out, because going into all of these character assassinations, we understand that there's something about her that has her disconnected from the rest of the group, and it largely comes down to the fact that she can't keep a secret. But then she seems super sweet and super supportive while Kay is being shunned. But Kay, I don't know, she still kind of like brushes her off and won't have anything to do with her. So again, I'm like, why is she part of this friend group? I need to understand this friend group. And what we learn about Maddie is that notorious RBG has nothing to do with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Nothing to do with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and has everything to do with, it means, the notorious rebound girl. And what do you guys think that is alluding to? Yes, she slept with Spencer when he and Kay broke up. I still have no idea if he actually slept with Kay, but apparently he sleeps with everybody else, and she takes offense to this, even though she broke up their relationship by having a fling with Bree in his own bedroom. Like, this girl just can't take responsibility for anything she does, which, if she were a psychopath or a sociopath, like, all would have been forgiven. But she's not. So it's just boring and tedious. And I simply don't need all of these little bits throughout the entire novel. It just weighed it down. I did essentially like the writing, but the execution, if the execution had been better, if the plotting had been tighter, if we'd had our characterization, then this would have been a great novel. But it's like Mila lost her train of thought. Here's a great idea. Let me write that until I don't know where to go with it anymore. Here's a great idea. Let me go with that until I don't know where to go with that anymore. You know what? I can pick this thread out. Let me go with that until, again, I don't know where to go with it anymore. It's just weighty. Maddie, she's the next one that Kay has to take down. For some reason, Kay doesn't actually have to take her down because she winds up dead. She apparently commits suicide in the bathtub. This then pulls suspicion away from Kay. I think she only has one more recipe that she has to get into. And it turns out to be not a recipe at all. It's just like, Kay is the queen bee and blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, what about Bree? And what is Bree's tie to Jessica Lange? But no, Bree is in New York celebrating her anniversary with Justine. Around this time, Kay, so Nola, shares with Kay that Bree is the one who pushed Jessica and Spencer together. And she shows her these text messages. Kay writes a horrible note, tacks it on Bree's door. I forget exactly what happened. I believe she had been caught in a storm and the only place she could go was Nola's room. She spends like the next 2 days there, not messing around with Nola, but Nola does kiss her, to which she responds. And I'm like, what is this? Everybody already thinks they're sleeping together. And I'm like, why are you responding? There is no chemistry here. There's no physical attraction towards her. Why are you letting these things happen? We don't even really know who Nola is. We don't know why we're gonna root for her, why we need to invest in her. Kate doesn't like her. That is the theme here. She's just a weirdo who Kay is using to help get through this revenge website, but we never really know who Nola is, except that she's kind of a pest. Bree calls and she's like, did you hear about Maddie? And she said, yes. Kay realizes Bree has not come home yet and that she has not seen the note on her door. Bree says, I'm coming home. And Kay tries to tell her not to, but Bree's like, our friend just died. You think I'm gonna stay here in New York celebrating my anniversary? She tells Bree, I'm in Nola's room. Please bring me a spare change of clothes, because she's like hanging out in Nola's too tight, too small clothing. Why she could not go to her own dorm, I do not know. She does, in some respects, catch a cold. The next thing we know, Bree has shown up. And even though Kay had all this time to go take that note off Bree's door, she didn't do it. Bree shows up and she's pissed. She takes Kay back to her room. It turns out she'd been wearing a wire, like she'd been taped up, and she was trying to get Kay to admit to the murders of Hunter and Maddie. And I'm like, why are we trying to prove that she killed a cat? Except that's where sociopaths start, trying to get dirt on all these instances that just happened in their friend group. When she reveals this to Kay, Kay is so offended and she leaves. Why? Why is Bree mic'd up? For whom is she mic'd up? Did she go to the police after she found this note? Did she team up with somebody and now she's going to take this recording to somebody? No, it was really more for her own peace of mind. It's like a test for Kay. Now they are on the outs. It is Thanksgiving, and Kay, she will not go home. She refuses to go home. She does not like her home environment. She does not feel welcome at home. She has spent the last couple years at Bree's for Thanksgiving, but she's obviously not invited there. So who do you think she goes to Thanksgiving with? Nola. Nola has revealed that she has a sister named Bianca. Bianca is the golden child. They are on the outs to some respect. They show up at the house. She meets the dad. She meets the mom. Then she goes up to Nola's room with her. And I'm like, if this place is so big, why are you sharing a room with Nola? Again, I get it. It's convenience. It's a plot device, but it doesn't make sense. It actually kind of gives me the ick because Nola is giving me the ick, and I'm still trying to figure out why Maylee is trying to force them together into some sort of relationship. They're in her room and they're drinking. Kay is like, I don't drink this kind of stuff. So Nola takes her portion, goes to the bathroom, drinks it, and then she reappears in a bathing suit and striped knee socks. Kay is like, what in the heck are you doing? And she goes, well, like, my family, we have all these issues. Like, we all used to be super close until my grandfather died, and then my grandfather left my dad this house. Everybody got upset, and now nobody talks to each other. But before all the drama, we had these traditions, and one of them was to jump off the cliffs into the ocean because they're in Cape Cod, and it's this mega mansion that overlooks the sea. Kay's like, no. Do you know how cold it is out there? Nola, she gets Kay to come with her nevertheless. What she does then, in this, I mean, now we're seeing that something is off with Nola, like legitimately off with Nola, but at the same time, because we have no basis for Nola, no depth to her character, it's like every decision she makes is just because Maylee wants her to make these decisions to cause drama. She is taunting Kay and she's pressuring Kay to jump, and Kay's like, if I go in there, I'm gonna die. So Nola is like, oh, well, I've got your coat, and this coat belonged to her brother Todd. They had been besties. Eventually, he and Megan, her other bestie, start flirting and they get together. And I think this is like 8th grade, maybe going into 9th. I don't really remember. I don't really care. They got hot and heavy. I don't know how many bases they got through, But Megan decides she's at that point where she's willing to send him clothless pictures of herself. They have a fight, they break up, and then all of a sudden, these pictures are everywhere, and she ends up killing herself. Not too long after, Todd dies, is murdered by Megan's brother. And the question is, did Todd have anything to do with it? He says he didn't. He said he had his phone stolen and that somebody else leaked these pictures. What Nola points out, and that what anyone with a brain can figure out, is how did they get to your best friends? How did they figure out the password to your phone? Like, he obviously was involved, but for some reason, Kay wanted to stand by him and she gave him an alibi, even though she didn't even like him anymore. Megan had invited her over to share this traumatic incident with her. Kay's first response is, oh, I'm sure he didn't mean to do it. I'm sure he wasn't involved. Everything will be okay. Megan kicks her out not too long after she dies. And now we get to a point where Nola asks, she's like, but did you actually believe him? And Kay admits no. Well, maybe not in so many words, but by not saying yes, she said no. She doesn't even like her brother anymore, and she believes that he's the reason that her best friend killed herself. So like, why are you carrying around his jacket? Well, it turns out that there was this picture in the jacket that for some reason is the reason that she kept this jacket close to her. The picture was taken the day of his murder. It just shows kind of like this happy, carefree family. I'm like, I still don't understand why you're carrying this picture around. It seems a lot more devious than you're letting on. But Nola throws the jacket into the water and it's never seen nor heard from again. Nola realizes how upset Kay is, and so the next morning Kay wakes up and there's a stack of coats on her bed. Nola's like, I'm sorry what I did. I wasn't clear thinking. Here are all of the coats that have been left here ever. Kay reveals why that her brother's coat was priceless, but sort of they do end on a navy wool Burberry coat, which similar to her brother's coat, but better. Nola then says, hey, we need to get a better recording device. Let's go get one. And Kay's like, I really don't want to go. Nola goes without her and both parents are in the house. Kay's like poking around and I am just waiting for something sinister to happen. I'm waiting for an answer because we are past the halfway point. We don't get much, but what she does do is she cuts off all her hair. Nola comes back and is shocked and disappointed. Like, what Kay does has to be approved by her. And that's essentially what she says is like, I don't like it. Why didn't you ask me? And Kay's like, because I didn't have to. They go down to dinner. The parents are talking, just trying to like engage with Kay, but she can't seem to say anything right. Then the subject of Bianca comes up, and what Kay knows about Bianca is that she's a perfect child and that she is engaged. She says something about how it's too bad Bianca couldn't be there, and the parents are starting to get real cagey. She's talking about the engagement, and the parents are like, excuse me. Finally, they're like, you know what, Kay? We need to have a private conversation with Nola. And I'm sorry, but like, we don't think you should stay with us anymore. It's just not gonna work out. Kay leaves, the dad gives her some money, and she gets on the train, only to be approached by Bree. Apparently, Bree had sought her out. They make up, although there's this really weird situation. Bree has a different theory about who killed Jessica. She thinks it was Nola. They're talking about this, and at one point, it's like that moment where you can give the big reveal and this kid in front of them yells, Santa! And I was like, I mean, it was fun, but like, why? So then the kid's mother turns around and she gets on to them about talking about their reality crime shows and how it's not a great place to talk about that and that they should do it in private. I'm like, this is a really strange situation. Like, that's what I'm saying is this writing, it didn't entirely make sense. Bree, who is a future lawyer, she pitches her prosecution. Kay says, that's a great theory, but like, what is the defense? There is no defense of this. So now they essentially have to get Nola to admit to something. And this is also where Bree is like, look, let's clear the air about our relationship. And there is none. Okay, Bree, like, I like that you're standing your ground. I know that you know what you want, but at the same time, who are you? Who are any of you? I'm really done with this novel by this point. Nola comes back. She and Kay are hanging out. Kay has an opportunity to look through Nola's journals. At this point, the website has been taken down. It's self-destructed. So this is, again, like when Kay and Bree had that big blowout when Bree was recording her. You know, she can't give any proof as to what's happening, but she sees in the journals drafts for all of these recipes. So she's trying to call Nola out, and she takes off the new mic pack, basically saying, hey, I'm not trying to record you. This is a safe space. Nola admits to... low-key admits to being behind everything. I guess she says enough that Kay, who had the original recorder, like, could use that. Nola basically takes Kay out. But what happened? Spoilers, end of the review, all that kind of stuff. Nola was Bianca. She'd had some sort of psychotic break. Why her parents thought it was okay for her to live away from home, I do not know. I'd read in reviews how they didn't like this whole psychotic break, this dual personality, like, let's blame it on the mental illness aspect because it was an easy way out. So I was expecting a whole lot more about this dual personality thing, but it didn't play much into the story at all. We had like 2 or 3 minor mentions of Bianca. It gets blown up at Thanksgiving, but then we're just tossed back to Bates. So the thing is, Jessica was not the target of Dear Valentine. Nola was. So Nola, she has all the evidence from Dear Valentine. Her goal was to frame Kay for her murder. It just so happened that when she went to the lake to commit her murder-suicide, Jessica was there. Jessica was rude to her, so she sacrificed Jessica in her place. Now let's put all of the suspicion on Kay for this, which I was like, how? Why? As far as I know, the detectives knew nothing about Dear Valentine. The only way that Kay could be under any kind of suspicion is because now all of her closest friends are being taken down. To me, that just wasn't enough. Then, some shape or form, Nola felt some kind of remorse, which is why she killed Maddie so that suspicion would be taken off of Kay. But why? I still don't understand any of this. I know that Maylee tries to explain it, but none of it made sense to me. I thought it was grasping at straws, like a shot in the dark here. And here is the biggest spoiler-ish for a subplot that we've been leaning up to. Apparently, Kay orchestrated Todd's murder. Even though she was no longer friends with Megan, her promise to Megan was that whoever did this wasn't going to get away with it. And that is what this picture in the jacket's all about. It's like a false alibi of sorts. I don't really know. Whatever. Read the book for yourself to really get a clearer picture. No pun intended. There had been something about a football game. Kay was going to the football game or just going somewhere. Todd was like, oh, I'll give you a ride. And she's like, no, I'll walk. And she knew he was going to volunteer to go with her. They get to this designated time and place that she'd arranged with Megan's brother. But instead of him beating Todd up, he ran him over. The brother he grabs Kay and he's like, look, this is the story. You were never here. You've been at my mom's house the entire time making cookies. I don't understand any of this. Why would she even be at Megan's house making cookies with Megan's mother? If you investigate anything, you'll know that she and Megan weren't friends. So why at this point in time would she be at the house making cookies with the mother? The murder, it was basically staged to seem like it took place at a different point in time, so she couldn't have been there because she was at the house making cookies. I don't know. It was pretty thin for me. This was essentially her big secret. I don't know if Nola actually knew this, or if what Nola had figured out, because Nola's a computer genius, is that she had lied about Todd's alibi, that she'd given Todd an alibi, so she had lied to the police. It was very convoluted, in my opinion. We needed to streamline and to pare down. We needed to focus on what we needed to focus on. We needed to focus on Jessica's murder. Who was Jessica and why would she be murdered? We needed to know the girls in Kay's friend group. We needed to know why she would ever hang out with Nola outside of being blackmailed into it. We don't necessarily need her romances with Spencer or Bree. We have a key event and an inciting incident. I guess in some ways the inciting incident of this entire novel was the deaths of Megan and Todd. So I would have kept that there, but I needed more breadcrumbs. I needed that to be dropped in there a little bit more so that suspense was going to build. Straight up, I needed to know who Kay was. Because I thought at this point we were going to be like twirling our little mustache and turning around and like breaking the fourth wall and be like, actually, I was behind everything. We do see, because before she came to Bates, she was Katie. So her name is Catherine. Before she comes to Bates, she was Katie. She gets to Bates and she's Kay. Spencer, who she divulged certain secrets to early on, called her Katie. She goes to Thanksgiving, they call her Catherine. But now at the end of this novel, she's like, well, I guess I could be Catherine. So there's something going on with her. Like, she keeps changing who she is. And, the idea is that she's not getting a soccer scholarship. She's not going to an Ivy, but she is going somewhere. She's moving on after high school, and she's going to change who she is once again. And I thought that was great. I really enjoyed that part. But it came out of nowhere. Like, because we didn't know who she was. We didn't get into we didn't get into her mind. We didn't dive into her psychology. The book had good bones, but it was poorly executed. That's all I can say, and I'm done. I'm ready to be done. So there you go. I'd also like to see some liking, subscribing, and commenting. Talk to you later. Bye.